we are trendy,
Yeah.
hashtag Latin American music. And that is like, we have to be conscious of that, and we have to take the wave,
Right.
like to establish ourselves. And it was like, hey, we are here.
Yeah.
And it's not just Shakira and Karol G and all these amazing artists that I think people who like music should do. Is just, it's not just putting play on Spotify. It's also just a commitment of, there are persons who making this music, and how we gonna support it if we want to keep hearing their music.
Hi, welcome back to Unsigned Berlin. For this episode, I'm sat down with Alejandro from Entre Trópicos, which is a events organizing project that's designed to sort of build a home away from home for the Latin American community in Berlin, and more importantly, well, arguably more importantly, to build a bridge so that musicians who are up and coming in Latin America can come over to Berlin and do their concerts here. He's an incredibly intelligent person. It was really interesting to talk to him, get his insights on not only the event series and everything that Entre Trópicos is doing, but the radio shows that he's hosted with Refuge Worldwide, which is a community radio station here in Berlin, and his perspectives on where the culture is headed in terms of Latin music and the decolonization of his mindset as a Colombian who's now moved to Europe, and sort of how he was originally not in love with his home music, the Colombian music and music in Spanish, and has since fallen back in love with it, and his story of that and his perspectives. And I hope you really enjoy. The episode's coming right at you in just a moment, but I just want to give a little update on what's happening with Unsigned Berlin. So we will be dropping down the number of episodes that we're doing. This isn't a negative thing. It's just we were doing one every week for the last basically 2 years. This is, let's see, season 4, episode 17. So 77, episode 77, not including the special episodes we did with Off Season or at the German Songwriting Awards. And it's going really well. But we're getting to the point now where we feel that if we drop down the number of episodes we do, we can deliver much higher quality episodes. So if you want to stay up to date with that into the next season, which will be coming in just a few weeks, subscribe. You can find us on Instagram. Obviously, you can subscribe where you're listening to this on YouTube or Spotify. If you leave a review, that really helps. And there might be a little break between the seasons because we want to be really confident that we can go into the next season with sponsors, which means that we can maintain doing the podcast and we can make sure everyone on the team is paid. And make it more professional and hopefully bring it to somewhere where we can provide an even better platform for the independent artists. We're also planning to put live sessions forward. We're recording in the studio since the beginning of the season, but getting it live session ready is a whole different thing. There's a live room which is over there, which you can't see. But going into the new season, we'll hopefully be putting out a live session once a month and 2 episodes, so bi-weekly. If you have any thoughts on what else you'd like to see from a new season of Unsigned Berlin, any artists you would like to see, any business people, which we're hoping to get more of, please let us know in the comments. Like I said, like I always say, if you can leave a review, that helps us a lot. If you can share the podcast to someone who might find it interesting, that helps enormously. With that being said, hope you enjoyed the episode. I really enjoyed talking to Alejandro, and thank you for listening. Yeah, like I said, I'll do an introduction separately, but can we start with you introducing yourself and the Entre Trópicos project?
Okay, I will try to be tight. My name is Alejandro Tafur Fernandez. I come from Colombia, from Cali, Colombia. I have been living here in Germany already 6 years, and Entre Trópicos started 2 years ago.
Right.
And it started when I kind of lose purpose in this city, kind of a way. I wanted to study film, arts, but I didn't get in. So I kind of, music was my way to run away of all these situations. And it came basically, the first like close up to cultural management was like during pandemic. We started doing kind of rave parties in parks and stuff, and during that time we realized that it was really important for the Latin American community to have spaces where we can hear our music. So it started like this, and then it started like coming more requirements. I was like, okay, we wanted that we can have a space where we can just put music, and after that it was like we want to have a good sound system so we can hear our music. Like, so Entre Trópicos is basically that. It's like a cultural management project that looks for the artists and the music in diaspora, trying to build bridges from bands in Latin America so they come to Europe, and also to basically work with the community and try to manage spaces where we can say we are here.
Mm-hmm. Are there regular venues that you go to?
Well, we have a partnership with S4E17.
Mm-hmm.
They opened us the door when we were starting. Actually, our first concert, we did it there, thanks to Jero, that is like one of the heads there.
Yeah.
And we have been working together to curate and bring bands from Latin America to Berlin. Since then, have been 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, we're looking for more small venues because now we're receiving more emails from bands we want to play there, and it's music that we actually quite like.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they don't have the public feel. So,
is it mostly bands from Latin America?
Yes, that is our main target.
Mm-hmm. But it's not like German bands that are like, as in bands that are working in Latin America or bands that are working in Berlin?
Both. Actually, we're interested also like in the diasporic community, Latin American. So there is a lot of Latino bands playing in Berlin. So we try to do this like full band from Berlin or from Germany, and the main band from Latin America. So try to, but the idea is mostly our Latin American musicians.
Why do you feel like it's so important to have a physical space?
I mean, like we took from where we come from just our luggage. So sometimes it's nice to have a place where you just can go when you feel low, or you just feeling lonely and you don't know no one in the city. So it's like, through music, I like this song, I like this music, so I will go there, and that person will meet other persons who like that music, and probably from their same country. So I think that are important spaces. Spaces are, for humans, are really important to socialize and to find like feel at home, especially if you are like outside of your own country.
Yeah. Do you put a lot of effort into making sure that there's Germans and locals from other places at the events as well?
No.
Right. Is that a conscious decision?
Yes, it's a conscious decision. I think that if the people from if Germans and Europeans want to come, they need to have a bond with it.
Right.
And I like when that happens, because I know there are true persons who will understand the music and will enjoy it. Like, of course, in matters of business, it's not that good because you are losing a lot of like possible like guests, because the idea is also to be open.
Yeah.
But I think that at the moment it's just to focus in the community that we want to build, and we wanted to start talking. Okay, let's get together with the Brazilians. Let's get together with the Chileans. Because Latin America is really complex. There are many countries, and each country have their own collective or their own like music that they like. So the idea is to think ourselves as a unity. But of course, that is kind of a dream. But that is the idea, and I think Berlin is a place that it have enough space for that. Not in venues and stuff. It's like really complicated. But there are a lot of persons wanted to do something, and I think it's important.
Is there an Entre Trópicos team?
Well, yes, I always collaborate with a lot of persons, friends that help me and work together each other. But at the moment, I'm like curating, and I'm working also with a person that we want to create a project, and like to see how we work together. And I think it's more open. I'm like the main person of Entre Trópicos, but I'm always open to collaborate with others, and that is basically the idea.
How do you make sure when you're curating that you can pick bands and music from other places in the diaspora that aren't just Colombia?
Well, that it was at the beginning. I was just curating Colombian bands, just because the fact of it was the most closest thing that I had. It was through the context that I had. So we basically start bringing my favorite bands. So I already brought all the Latin America Colombian bands that I like. And in a moment, I just realized, okay, I cannot
Yeah.
again to just being Colombian proud. So I started contacting Bossa FM, that is one of the Brazilian producing house here in Berlin
Mm-hmm.
of concerts and events, and we create like our own program of three bands from like the new wave in Brazil, kind of bossa, but also electronic sounds. And for instance, Sofia Chablau is a band from Sao Paulo, more like shoegaze, post punk. And like at the end of this month, 30th of July, will be Ana Frango, that is like more funk and Brazilian vibes groups. So I'm trying to open more, and with the time, like that is the idea now.
Mm-hmm. And one of the points you put when we were talking about like when we texted about what to talk about was decolonization.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about just like what that means and then how you're working with that in Entre Trópicos?
Well, the answer is quite long. I'm gonna try to keep
We have
tight.
time.
We have time. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
we're good.
Well, actually, it starts like for myself. I come from a colonized country, Colombia. Even though that we are independent, blah blah blah, we still have huge dependence on Eurocentric and Anglo culture.
Yeah,
Like,
I speak Spanish.
but
Yeah.
we speak Spanish, exactly. So we are kind of confused. Like at least me, I was quite a confused kid, because I didn't want it to see how I was. I wanted to have blonde hair and have straight hair and just hear indie music in English. I hate Spanish songs in Spanish, music in Spanish. I was like, no, I don't want to hear this. And it took me a while to start like putting down those walls. Actually, I left Colombia when I was 20 because I hated it. So it was kind of the motivation for me to immigrate, not because I needed it.
Right.
It was more like a search of I want to find a new place to call home. And the funny thing is like being outside and living the life of a forastero, more like a, immigrant. You start understanding a lot of your privilege. You start understanding who you really are, and also putting all those walls that are created through media, through like this system, that always make you feel that you should look down, like as a Latin American or as a Colombian. I'm also like talking from my experience more than something else, but through that experience, I get to know other persons who feel the same. That I was just like who I am, why I'm like with this color, why I have this hair. And funny thing, being outside, I start connecting with it through music, and with my family. Music was that home because it remembers me like December in Colombia. There is mostly like Christmas and a lot of music and happy time.
Yeah.
And I come from Cali, so we started hearing salsa and cumbia. And for me back then, it was just that. It was just like a music of joyness, just to
Like
Christmas music, but it was really tropical. I come from the tropical. So it was no more than that. But then when I left, I started hearing those music again, and I somehow, after all the experience of moving and seeing other stuff and seeing that it was not that amazing, I just started looking back and was like, wow, this music is actually good.
Right.
It was just like, and I started questioning myself in these like tags that we have for music or adjective. It's just like, Latino music is caliente, is like exotic and all these things. I was like, wait a second, but this is what they are doing is genius, because it's persons who actually taught themselves to play the music.
Right.
The process that they did musically-wise are not less than the ones that we call genius. Since you never hear that classic music is exotic.
Yeah.
Then you will never say that. So I started like trying to connect all these dots of myself, and I was like, oh fuck. I realized being outside that I was colonized.
Right.
because when you live inside, you don't see that you are colonized. You're just like, you are falling. Then when you go outside, I was like, that's why I was I didn't like my hair, I didn't like my skin. So I was just, how you can let people know about this, because it's just like a spell that you have to be shake, so you are cured of this spell, because in Colombia we never talk about it.
Right.
I remember hearing persons telling me, "Hey, I always ask this question: what would it happen if the Spaniards never discover us?" And I asked people this, and there were persons who replied to me, "Thanks God that the Spaniards found us." Like,
They replied what?
Yeah, thanks God that the Spaniards
Oh,
found
right.
us.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was just like, they was like, no, otherwise we would be like on naked still without technology, and it's like really weird, kind of like this dependency and how we see the other countries. So I'm a person who believes in cultural revolutions, and actually music had been always a part of these revolutions, and is the easiest way to transmit a message. And I think if we just do it seeing ourselves first and putting ourselves the place that we should be in terms of cultural production, and realizing who we are and have a sense of belonging and respect for ourselves, everything can turn a different way in terms of cultural, in terms of culture. Because if you see, Latin America is vast. It's insane, the different types just of music, but a way of expressing. But we don't see that because we are too close to the mirror.
Right.
That is.
Why is it not discussed, do you think?
I think now it's getting. I have to say that I left Colombia 10 years ago, so I'm a little bit behind of how the discussion is there. Maybe it develops the same like me during these 10 years. But when I was there, in the university, we never talk about that. Like, it was never a topic that I recall. Now there's some feedback that come from Colombia, hearing especially what happened the last 4 years with the social uprising. Culture play a really important role, and I think through a small collective, we start talking about this. But in the mainstream of Colombia, no, it's still like more or less ignored.
Yeah. So you moved here. You didn't end up studying film. What were you doing in the time in between before you started Entre Trópicos?
I was working in Siphon Bread. Time for bread.
Yeah.
I was making cappuccinos there, and then I jumped to other cafe branches as barista.
Right.
Until I start hating people. I have to leave. I just couldn't, like. It was a moment of my life that I needed to take a turn, because actually it was affecting me to work on service. I was just like, what the hell? At the beginning, it's really important, like, to have the experience, because it teaches you a lot about privilege. When you, like, it's not a secret that the immigration processes in Germany, they kind of filter you. So no, like a person who come from Latin America that live here have certain privileges. Because otherwise we wouldn't be able to be here. We'd have to put some money in account, and So I think that as a privileged Latino who live here, it was really hard just to take these jobs and put yourself in these shoes. Because when you're living in Colombia, like for instance myself, it was one of the person who say, why they don't like work quicker? Why they are not faster? And then when you are just on that side, it was really revealing. You earn some privilege, you lose others, and kind of confronting people every day at 7 a.m. and receive all their shit. It was really hard. It was, and also besides, it was not working. Like, film didn't work out, so just like it was hard just to during those times. But I think those times are the ones who just, it's the way that you learn without looking, just something that build you up and make you stronger. And through that experience, also you met persons. And I think that is the beauty of it.
Was doing events the first thing that came out of like moving on to something new?
Actually, it just came out because we are three friends. We also have a collective of DJs. We are three, and we met like on my first year in Berlin, and since then we have been really close friends. Ñaño and Simon from Necios, and we actually, the idea of making events or just to be on them, it was because we wanted to play our music. It's always like this, no? Like I don't like. We couldn't put better music, is what we would say. It's just like we are on the corner of the room, and it's like this song would be better.
Yeah.
Back in the days, was like that, and we say, okay, what you need to be a DJ? Not that much, just the songs, and we start that way without knowing nothing about DJing, and also like going through the process of. I think it was also good that we didn't know about DJing, because the music that we put is not like it's not producing those scales and rhythms that it's different. It's more different to mix, even though if you can without production in between. But we have been learning ourselves just like to create our own style of putting the songs. Like I realized that also with DJing, they might not be like a proper way. Of course, like if you want to build techno, opera, and blah blah, of course, yes. But in other genres, you can be more playful also. And one day we wanted, like during the pandemic, the first year, I have to move out from Berlin.
Right.
I went to Bonn to study my master, so I was able to stay.
Right.
That is like a thing. I started studying Latin American studies in Bonn for my visa. So I just move out to Bonn, and then the pandemic started, lockdown.
Right.
And that summer, calling between Simon, Ñaño, and I was like, hey, let's do a rave. Everyone is doing one. We should it not.
Yeah.
So we found a place in Verin, Reverge. And in Reverge, there was already a Latino collective, but from Europeans. It was really interesting. Half. There was Spanish, and it was really nice because they have already experience. So we jump in, and our name was Calentura, and their name was Baile Sucio.
Right.
So that event, it was the first time that we put a song as DJs, and also the first event that we did here, and it was more like, let's see what comes out.
Yeah.
And like I remember that there was a moment where 800 persons was in that park.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, even the police came. Everyone was invited. I mean, and in that moment, I'm also a photographer, so I took my camera and I was talking with people, and I think in that moment it was when I realized that this was important, and that I kind of find the purpose that I was looking for, that I lost with not getting to the film school. Because people was like, hey, really nice that this happened, because we don't have spaces to hear music. There is not like, and also during a pandemic.
In general, there's not a lot of places.
There are not a lot of places. So it's funny because then we start realizing that we were not alone. That is also an important, like, kind of idea that as an immigrant you should know, that because normally we arrive to a new city and we don't know that nothing is happening. So in that moment, like, groups start getting together and knowing between them and realizing that there were a lot of people from Bogota, and there was a lot of people from Cali or from Santiago or Buenos Aires. So it's just like, it creates like this community, and so far have been really, really interesting, because that was to 2020. And before that, there was not that much collective. But when the collective started being something, everyone's realized, okay, it's possible.
Right.
Like, I know that a lot of persons, or I feel that a lot of persons who are making events right now start the same way that us, asking ourselves why we shouldn't play our own music, you know.
Yeah.
So now there is, I think every weekend there is 2 3 Latino parties in any different type of directions and stuff, and that is really really exciting in just 4 years.
Yeah. And the idea of providing a sort of home away from home is very important, because then people can sort of be attached to where they came from. So
Exactly.
there's an idea of kind of then if you're here to stay, then you should be kind of finding a way to make that a part of Berlin, and not just like a little bubble.
Yes.
Have you thought about that, and is that something you think about moving forward with Entre Trópicos? Of like how to make it a
Well,
sustainable sort of thing that can become a part of Berlin?
well, actually, it took me a while to feel part of this city. And I remember that it was like 2 years ago that I was like, hey,
Right.
Berlin is my home, you know, is where I live. Sometimes it's hard to feel this way.
Yeah.
So that happened because I start seeing myself more represented in like what is going on around.
Right.
And I think that is important part just to keep going. In this 2 years, I have learned a lot. I didn't learn about doing this. I basically, the experience was through losing money. It's the university with the events. But the idea is to think on future, just to create this bridge that I'm telling you. Like culture is gonna be always needed.
Yeah.
It's something that people really needs, just entertainment. And I think it's important that this our culture is being produced and shared through the right hands. You know, we don't want to that falls in exoticism, and you know we're against of what is against, but we are not into this party that we sell Latin America something exotic. Or this like the tropical for us is not just the plantains and the bananas. You know, for us like the tropic goes more from this alternative side of what can also the tropic be. So I think the idea is to expand. Because my plan is maybe in 2 years move to Mexico and see what we can build from there and how we can establish more like kind of environment where it can be sustainable. Because of course culture is really desired, but earning from it is or just sustain more than earning, you know. It's like because mostly this project is based on the love that I had through music, the love that I found on, you know, sharing the culture and being culture a lighter to something bigger, you know, just something that is gonna light the fire and will just continue, you know.
Yeah. There's I think a feeling in Europe with Latin music that there's a big growing audience, and I mean the last 5 years or so the top streamed person on Spotify has been various Latin artists, but at the same time, at least within the people that I'm around, there feels like a frustration with the state of music culture right now, that there's lots of stuff that's just kind of being put out without a lot of thought, and a lot of the really big projects are just kind of not that good, but they're backed by labels. Do you have a feeling of where Latin music in Europe sits right now?
Well, I think in my experience, like the European crowd, or at least the German crowd, has been always really interest on the music, what is going on. And there is a lot of like record labels that support bands from Latin America. I think that side is pretty established. There is a lot of like record labels from Europe that like support and have also with the booking stuff. I think one of these discussions that is, I think the bands have a more like established place in terms of playing in festivals. There's a lot of persons that like small bands that create a whole tour just in each country. Like these countries have a really good development of festivals and places where culture can happen during the summer.
Yeah.
So, and also through alliances with other kind of music markets, festivals that like is a whole circuit. So I think bands have this space, like Latin American music is really good. So I think that speak by itself. But on the side of, for instance, producers, electronic producers, and DJs, there is always the struggle that, for instance, their tracks are played in the venues here in Berlin, but they are no higher.
Right.
That was kind of a thing that it was going on. It's changing, of course, because the DJs are start moving to Europe and the producers have having more, like, of course, it's cheaper if they're in Europe.
Yeah.
So it's growing, and there is, like, for instance, this Latin core scene that is growing more and more. Is like electronic, Latin American music, electronic, like really from the people and growing through SoundCloud. And it's funny because it's kind of the techno from Latin America, or the techno from Colombia is one of the biggest posers. There are a lot of like genres from this whole thing, Latin core. And it's funny because going back with the discussion, the like here people love it. It's just like when they put that in Berghain or somewhere, they always appear like the Nina Kravitz put it once in Miami, and it was so crazy because Nina Kravitz put in guaracha, and it create a big fuss because we have a term for these persons that like techno, but they are just like the judgmental techno lovers. And it's like, you shouldn't hear that, blah, blah, blah. We call them technotombos.
Right.
That it means like a techno police, something like that. So it's also about the discussion of like, okay, so you don't like this because it comes from a marginalized environment. Like, okay, that is music for poor people.
Right.
But then what happens if people in Europe like it?
Right.
Whereas, so you're going to start liking it because there is this validation, or you are going to still believing that techno have to be just European, or from Berlin, or blah, blah, blah. So it happens already, this discussion of how we can just decolonize our mind through music. It's just like it's there going on. And I think that is the really interesting part of this Latin core, because it's a lot of young people producing tracks, like playing everywhere and just bringing this new sound. Because what you said, I think that it's not the first time that I hear from Europeans say that they're tired of the same, that there is not something that creates excitement for them, and then comes this new sound or this new rhythm that was like, okay, I like this. So it's really interesting. I think we are trendy. Hashtag Latin American music. And that is like, we have to be conscious of that and do stuff with that.
What do you mean?
I mean, like, we have to take the wave, like to establish ourselves. And it was like, hey, we are here. And it's not just Shakira and Karol G and all these amazing artists. No, Karol G is really nice. Shakira
had the time.
Have their time. The other day she did playback, but I guess it's what a big artist do, They pay them to do playbacks. The most expensive playback in history. Anyway, but yeah, I mean that even Karol G come from a really in another context. Karol G would be like, because there are a lot of classism in Colombia, so she make herself to where she is. That's why it's so valuable, and people really love her, because she comes from the hoods, in Medellin. So that is kind of remarkable of how also like talent and also like persistence artists in Latin America. Yeah.
What do you think the steps are that need to be taken to make sure that it's not just a trend, and that this the Latin American music stays around?
I mean, it have been there.
Mm-hmm.
We also had it with salsa
Mm-hmm.
back in the days. Salsa is an insane phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
It's still going on, but I think we are in the position that we are right now. Besides of the talent, is there's a lot of investment. There's a lot of money behind these big names. So in the moment that it stopped being like kind of a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
or people start liking it, I don't know, Indian music,
Right.
because like 20 years ago, who would have thought about K-pop, and now they're ruling,
Mm-hmm.
So I think it can take as long as like this person want, this person who are behind of the labels that want to just promote more. So I think if the idea is that taking this wave, trying to create like a circuit, donde we know, okay, this, if we like, we start selling also indie bands.
Mm-hmm.
Why not just pop? We can also create like the scene of indie, and there is already, and there is people who love indie music. In Mexico, for instance, like 2 months ago, Interpol like packed El Zócalo de Mexico. That is like one of the biggest venues in the world.
Yeah.
It's for free, but a lot of Mexicans love post-punk and went there.
Right.
And I mean, like, there is people, but I think it's important that we start believing that in this scene something can be built, or ecosystem can work, in sense that both producers and artists can like get something from it. Because if just one side wins, like, it's not ecosystem, it's just like a pure business one-to-one.
Mm-hmm. When you did a couple shows for Refuge Worldwide,
Yeah.
how did you put those together? What was your mindset going into it?
I have like this thing in between my forehead, because when I was studying in Colombia, my radio teacher talked to me and said, "You're never gonna do radio." And I always have it here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw the possibility, it's like, I'm gonna prove it wrong. And I do it basically because it started because a group of singers from Colombia were coming, and they're really important. Las Cantoras de Chocó, and they were looking for a place where they can do an interview.
Oh, was this the group talking about the Fase Positivos?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the first one, and I liked the story, so we did a program. But after that, I kind of leave it there. I found that it was really interesting material, but I didn't I didn't have an idea behind.
Right.
And then came Nidia Góngora, that is also an important songwriter and musician from Colombia. We did like a program with other friends. It was also with live music, because we create like this event we did a cartography from Africa to North Colombia and the Pacific.
Right.
That it was through music.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of talk about that on the program. We found it that it was a really nice story to put it on radio. And it was just into this year that I was, okay, there is a bunch of music, like really nice music. We can bring them all.
Yeah.
But what we can do is just to talk about them. To start, like, to create all this process, from let the people know which the band is. They grow, and in 3 years or 2 years, they can be outside. Because that is the other thing, everyone is complaining about Spotify. That I get it. It's just it's shit deals. But we have to take like advantage of these platforms too. Yeah. In terms of like you go to a concert and you don't buy merch, but you're criticizing Spotify. So you're just like, what you're doing, It's just, okay, so if we are going to criticize Spotify, let's start thinking in how we can make possible that the bands sustain themselves, because outside is the best platform to them to get to know each other, like to get other people to know them. Yeah. And so I have been always like a person who consume a lot of Spotify and trying to find like new music, just to let them know that they are not alone out there.
Yeah.
Because that is a problem. They start making amazing music, and then they play for 2 years, and then they disappear because there is not a way to sustain.
Yeah.
But it's not for the fact that Spotify, they don't pay them enough.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, but it's just because outside there is not a structure where they can survive.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to create also these strategies as culture, as with our project, is just to let people know that there are bands outside and they are telling about this and talking about that. For instance, in Latin Americans, Latin America, we always have like female songwriters,
Right.
and female singers, female voices that have been really strong. But now it came like this new wave of folk music, and with guitars and also electronic stuff. So I was like, okay, there is this thing going on that I really like it. So I create a list, like a mix. I talk a little bit in the beginning, and we did it already 3 times. The first one was with these female songwriters. Then we did it with post-punk. And the last one was with a guest that we have from Brazil, from one of our concerts, Bruno Berli, and Alici. And then we talk about like music and how it's like music for diaspora. So I think is the cool thing about Refuge Worldwide is that it's also this home, it's also this space as what Entre Trópicos meant to be, just to a place where you just can just create this.
Yeah.
And without any sense of, okay, you have to pay us back or something back. It's just like really they're open just to build this community, and each one builds their own community, because these help us just to, okay, we send like mostly the bands are really thankful when they receive, you sound in a radio. I was like, thank you so much. And they're really, really amazed about this. So this is kind of also the things that I think people who like music should do. Is just, it's not just putting play on Spotify. It's also just a commitment of there are persons who making this music, and how we gonna support it if we want to keep hearing their music. Is I think is about that. So yeah, let's see. I don't know if you notice, but I'm a kind of a dreamer, and so I'm just really a person who try to see this romantic side of not romanticizing, but just seeing also this poetic of what is also making music and what is beside the business. Just also this thing that it keeps safe on our hearts, and just like, okay, how we can return it. And I think that is the heart of Entre Trópicos, just to see, like, find a way to return to the artists a little bit of what they give.
Which I feel like radio plays an important part for as well.
Yeah.
By listening to radio, you're not only supporting the artist because the radio pays the artists for the play, but also taking a little bit away from like, oh, Spotify's the only place places things can get heard, which is true, but also not true when mostly what people see on Spotify is what's put up on the front page. So the work of the human curator is really important.
Yes, man, it's insane. Like when you think that you already discovered everything, you just can get deeper and deeper. I think that's why I got addicted to Spotify. I'm really addicted to this uplift. And also my algorithm, I love it. It's like the best open relationship I've ever had in my life. It's just like really, it's weird because they understand you. And also when you get deep into certain genre, they start showing you really like bands that I don't think that they pay to be there, just really bands that have 100 listeners.
Is that mostly how you find music is Spotify?
Yes, like I kind of through the algorithm, and also just to get into other playlists, or just like the similar artists, or just like radio, like the radios that sometimes believe. So of course, if you are just hearing the same playlist over and over, you're just gonna see always the same artists. And of course, they if you hear 1 week Interpol, then you're gonna have like 3 mixes with all the hits of indie, and that is, I don't know, it has been I was kind of legalized thanks to Spotify. I was a person who was kind of a pirate. I used to download everything on Aries or just YouTube and stuff. And I remember being in New York, and there was this promotion of $1 for 3 months. I was like, I'm gonna buy it, and after 3 months, I will gonna be off of it.
Yeah.
Since then, I was captive because all this idea of just creating the playlist or just trying to share what it is like unknown, and create this is I don't know. I think is something that we can add to the discussion of revenues for the artists and how we can pay them back.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the first group of singers you had on the first episode you did with Refuge Worldwide? Because you brushed over it a little bit, but it's interesting and no one knows about it in Europe.
Yeah. Las Cantoras de Tumaco, ellas, they're from a foundation, Esperanza y Paz, and they sing bullerengue and bunde. They're like two curulao also, like genres from the Pacific, from the African heritage. And basically, this music, this chant, are music that welcome the person to the death. So it's just like a warm welcome to it, and just to embrace it. And it's a little bit like a mantra, and it's just you just repeat it, and you just get into it. You have a long time tradition, and like through our conflict, violent, we have violent for since Colombia exists. So these women had took the chants and bullerengue to make memory with it. So they talk about what happened, and they tell the stories through these songs. And there are songs that are kind of vivid, and you can imagine like the struggle and what they have to go through. And they're amazing. Like the energy that they carry is just insane. It's like in Colombia, that was like how long that was? There was 8 years ago that we have a referendum. Like people vote if they wanted to
referendum
to approve if we wanted peace or no.
Right.
And people vote no, like they didn't want peace. And it's crazy because of course violence is more concentrated, or was mostly concentrated on the outside of the cities. And in the city came in the 90s, in the 80s with all the narco traffic and stuff. So people start hating a lot the war, but with a sense of revenge. They hate war, but they want that the people who did that pay for it.
Yeah, so peace is not.
Yeah, it's not on the table. But what this referendum shows is that people who actually live the war daily, they didn't want to have this. And that is the amazing process of forgiveness that I see it mostly in persons who actually live the conflict, and they are just like, we don't want this not to happen again. They don't want revenge. Of course, there are person who would like to have revenge, but it's so beautiful how in this hate and so much terror and violence, something so genuinely of just let's forgive, let's move on, and they do it through music. And that is another elements that I can see in cultural revolutions, how we just can talk about forgiveness and remember or misses the person who just they are no more there, how we can remember them and how we cannot forgive them. What I say? Just
forget them.
Forget them. So they're amazing. Like that's why I was like, okay, let's do a radio show. Let's keep this safe. And the person in Refuge Worldwide, they were really happy about it.
Cool.
So they were always interested of continue doing events like this. And the next one that we did, it was with a dynasty of musicians from the north of Colombia, from San Basilio de Palenque. That is the first free territory in Latin America. And it was really, really interesting too because they also have the way of expressing. So this was from Pacific, and then we did Caribbean, and kind of there are like a lot of similarities, and with the same purpose too. So it's really nice that music can also be that social and political.
Mm-hmm. Nice, beautiful, interesting. I think it's a good place to stop. For people listening, is there anywhere you want to send them? Anything you want to say before we finish?
No, like I think if you just want to come to our events and see what is going on and what we are talking about, we are always like open just to receive messages, and like if you have an idea, or if you are also Latin American and you want to do something related with what we do, we are always interested in collaborate. And it's not that we are Entre Trópicos and we bring the best bands. It's just more we are Entre Trópicos, and it's also your home. It's also a place where just you have an ideas and we can see how we can make it possible. You just want to take pictures in an event and just write us. Like it's always like we are open to talk and just to be also a space in the sense of you can knock the door and somebody will receive you. And you can also see our music recommendation on our Instagram. Also the radio shows, you can find it on Refuge Worldwide, like Entre Trópicos. Like we are out there. Like if you put Entre Trópicos Berlin, you're gonna find what we have also more to say. And I hope to see you in a concert and stuff. Like just to come.
Yeah, awesome. And thank you everyone for listening. If you can leave a review, that helps us a lot. And if you can share to someone who you think might enjoy it. Otherwise, go follow us on our social media and go follow Entre Trópicos. And thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for the invitation.
Of course.